Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good morning, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. Hope you're having a great start to your Wednesday. Digital reporter Matt Jarowski joins us once again to talk about his latest Sunday story. Matt, it's great to have you back on.
Oh, thanks. Anytime.
Of course. And, this past Sunday, you invited everyone to take a look inside the Sweet House, one of the many historical homes in the Heritage Hill neighborhood here in Grand Rapids. It's a place that me personally, I know a lot of other people drive past probably all the time and have never really stopped to consider what might actually be in there. So that's what your story really did accomplish. And again, it is available to everybody to look at right now over on our website, woodtv.com. You even gave a little bit of a video tour in there as well. But the first thing, Matt, that I think we want to address is why exactly is it called the Sweet House? And talk a little bit about the history there.
Sure. So for those who don't know, the Sweet House is a historic home. It sits right in the corner of Fulton and Lafayette. It was built way back in the 1860s, and it's named after the home's first owner, who was Martin Sweet. Sweet is it's an interesting name because he really has a lot of fingerprints across Grand Rapids history. And so going through this story, not only are we talking about the house, but we're telling his story and the people that came after him too. So there's really interesting nuggets kind of wrapped in this one story about this historic home.
And that was one of the things that I found most interesting about this story, Matt, was that you mentioned that it started off as a home. Obviously, it's called Sweet House, and now it serves as kind of this historical landscape area. People can go check it out. There's a lot to really see and kind of view. It is served as kind of like as a museum, but it's changed hands a lot. It wasn't always just a home or a venue. I mean, it's been it's worn quite a few different hats, I should say.
That's exactly right. So Martin Sweet owned the home up until he passed away in 1905, and then his wife had it from there. It would eventually was leased out and then sold. It became a boarding house for a while. Before that, it was a music school with Adomar Malik, which we talk about that in the story too, who was a key founder or a key player in the St. Cecilia Society, Grand Rapids' first real civic symphony, a world-renowned musician. And then it really fell into the hands of the Women's City Club in 1927, I want to say 1927, where they purchased the home to renovate it, to fix it. At that point, it was really broken down, had a lot of issues, and they wanted to save this historic home. And so that was their home for almost 100 years. The Women's City Club, which by the way turns 100 this year, just moved out a few years ago. They still own the home and maintain the home and now use it, rent it out as a venue for meetings or baby showers, wedding receptions, that kind of thing. And it's a really unique spot in Grand Rapids where you can kind of go back in time a little bit. It's not necessarily era specific in certain ways, but it's delicate, it's decorative, and it's very unique.
Yeah, no, we were looking at a couple of videos that you actually shot of the place, and it just looks spectacular and really just, kind of a cut of a different time, really, and multiple different eras also. But Matt, one of the things that I know a lot of people probably are interested in are those artifacts, those other little pieces that are inside the house itself, and you went into detail about that in the story as well. But I want to hear from you, as somebody who was there and got to do this story and check out all these different pieces and possibly even learn a little bit more about them through your interviews. I mean, what were some of those big items that you think people would really be interested or even maybe a little bit surprised to find out are actually inside?
Sure. And there's several. And it's funny how it kind of blended in with stories that I've done in the past. I did a profile on Matthias Alton, who's this world-renowned painter who lived here in Grand Rapids for a long time. He was actually good friends with Martin Sweet, and the home still holds 4 Alton original paintings, which is really cool to see. To get to see them up close and in person. They have furniture that was designed and built by John Henry Belter, who was this huge name in the 19th century out of New York that came up with his own way of woodworking using these really delicate panels of plywood and violin glue and molding them together to make these really ornate shapes that were not just like beautiful, could be sculpted, but were also strong enough to actually be used as furniture. So that kind of stuff is really neat. But then there's also just the things that tie the home back to Martin Sweet. which I think is really cool. They made a point of naming one of the new dining rooms that was added after Martin Sweet's wife, his first wife, Desdemona. And what the one piece of furniture that they still have that actually belonged to the Sweets that's still in the home is Desdemona's giant mirror. And this is kind of the really interesting story. So when I went through the home, I was talking to a woman named Carol Dodge. She's kind of the de facto historian for the Women's City Club, and so she knows the house inside and out. So she walked me through every room and pointed out every little artifact. And Desdemona, let's back a little bit. So Martin Sweet wore a lot of hats in Grand Rapids. He was an entrepreneur, and for a good period of time, he was the wealthiest man in the city. They were very well to do. And Desdemona had this giant mirror that was kind of right in their foyer before they left out of the house, so she could make sure she looked her best. And they were kind of treated like local royalty at that point. Carol Dodge kept walking me through stories of how people would, line up and down Fulton Street to get a look at what Desdemona was wearing, what, elaborate outfits and fancy dresses that she was wearing to church on Sunday mornings. So little details like that, learning more about Martin Sweet and his businesses and how we still feel them today. There's a few of these nuggets in the book. He started off as a miller, but he made his money when when he took over a failing bank. That bank was then also built into Sweet's Hotel, which was one of the first luxury hotels downtown. Now he eventually lost the bank and the hotel, and that's part of a bit more of a tragic ending to that fairy tale story. And you can read all about that in the article. But that hotel is now the Amway Grand. His bank was eventually merged in with Old National and the Kent State Bank, which is Old Kent, which was just recently acquired by Fifth Third, 20 years ago. So people who remember when the Whitecaps first came 20, 30 years ago, it was Old Kent Ballpark was the original name. So Sweet's hand, we can still see it all these steps down the road.
I do think that is super interesting, specifically about this story. As I mentioned, it's a place that a lot of people here in Grand Rapids, myself included, just drive past every single day and maybe don't even notice it. And to know that the man who is behind that house is also behind a lot of other iconic places across Grand Rapids that we still feel today is super awesome. And that is why I highly encourage everybody to check out these Sunday stories, and specifically this one today. It can be found right now over on our website, woodtv.com. And you can check out everything that's inside and learn a little bit more about the history and learn a little bit more about everything Matt and I just talked about here on the live desk. Matt, it was so good to have you back on, and we'll see you next week.